one, it wasn't really that good because we weren't talented enough to pull off the songs. I think if we played those songs today,
Mm-hmm.
or if we gave them to another band, it would probably be decent. I mean, it's not going to be a great album, but it'd be decent. And I remember Jimmy saying one time, we were just trying to be a band. We recorded a video of us practicing these songs in John's, rec room that he was working at. So we were practicing there like every other Sunday, and we would record ourselves. So there's a video of us playing these songs. And we had fun playing them, and we didn't think anything about, our fans aren't going to like this. And we would work on it just like we worked on other songs. We would arrange them the best that we could. We would practice what we can. And you can tell John was getting a little bit better at guitar, and Tony singing a little bit more too. And so we had every intention of just recording these songs. And then when we pulled the plug on it, Mystic said, no, you guys got to come out with something. So which of these songs do you want on there? So what came out in Transition actually ended up being the best representation of us at that time that could actually be presented on an album.
But it's only about half of the songs you recorded.
Yeah. It was only about half of the...
You have everything else?
I do have everything else. I found an old cassette tape, from when we were mixing. Mm-hmm. And I converted that digitally. So maybe that's my, I could hold that over the band's head for ransom. It's like, hey, I could always release this because I'm sure I have the only, digital copy of this stuff. But it was funny is there was a time where Tony and I wanted to go down to Mystic and try to find the original tapes because we were always afraid that Mystic was going to release that stuff.
Yeah.
And which is still a fear, I guess. We never found them, but we went down to Doug Moody's house, and Doug couldn't stay with us for the weekend, but he let us stay in the house. And Tony and I looked all over that place for those tapes. And
I think a bunch of stuff was destroyed, wasn't it? Like the Sound of California. What was that? It was something.
Oh, right.
There was a fire.
Right. Yeah, I've heard of that. So hopefully it got destroyed there. But I did happen to have one cassette tape of that. And actually...
Well, I'm glad you have it. So it's a bunch of the stuff with Tony singing?
Yeah. It's Tony and, both Tony and John singing songs that I guarantee nobody else has ever heard outside of our band and our closest family or friends who heard this demo tape.
Well, Carl, I hope you spread the love,
Yeah. I've got, so that was a, and I didn't even know I had it. I think I was cleaning out one of my moves. And I found, what's this cassette tape?
Sure.
I played it. I thought, oh my God, this is we had a song called New Day.
Okay.
And we thought, this is the New Day stuff.
The New Day sessions.
Even when you listen to it, because the tape is so warped, you can just tell it's so slowed down. I mean, it's definitely not an E. I wouldn't even say it's an E flat. It's probably closer to a D tuning by the time you listen to it.
Wow.
But it's pretty up. There's some upbeat songs. John wrote some cool songs, but it was definitely rock. It was not punk rock anymore.
Yeah. So what happens after Transition? Because it's still. You take 4 years until Big Rusty Balls comes out.
Yeah, so somewhere along there, we end up playing that Riot show, which was infamous for Jimmy basically starting a fight out in the crowd.
Well, tell the story. So where's this show at?
This is in downtown LA at like a community center, literally in downtown LA, and so we're playing, and it was supposed to be the return of Ill Repute, because now this is the first show. This is, I think, in 1988. So this is the first show that we've played in at least 2.5 years. And this is
but 88 is before Transition. So you think
it would have been right after Transition.
Okay, so sometime in 89.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we get the show, and now we did know that Operation Ivy was opening for us, and if you see the flyer, one of the other opening bands in real small print says The Offspring. So it's The Offspring, Operation IV, that says from San Francisco, and us. And so those two bands play, they got a good crowd going. Yeah, so they got a good crowd going. And we have a few of our friends from Oxnard are with us, and we're playing. And we were playing a lot of transition stuff, but we knew we were going to play the old staples. We were going to play Laugh It Off was in there. We were going to play, Fuck With My Head and Sleepwalking. They were coming up, but the first few songs were all new songs. And we even opened up with Led Zeppelin's Rock and Roll. I don't know why, but we just did. So the crowd's just kind of like speechless at us. And I guess there was a donation box of clothes or something there, and they just started throwing clothes at us. I mean, I don't know if they were really trying to hit us at first. To me, I just thought they were just screwing around. Right. And I remember Jimmy just turning to me. He says, "One more fucker throws some up on stage, I'm going to deck him." He just says that to me in between songs. And I'm like, all right, whatever. So we start playing the song. And I think it was Laugh It Off. And because I remember playing it, and somebody throws a jacket, and it lands right on Jimmy's bass. No. And so in the middle of the song, Jimmy just puts his bass in the guitar stand, and the rest of us are still playing. He goes out in the crowd, nails the guy, and then the guy's friend tries to jump in. Mm-hmm. Jim nails him, knocks him out, and then Jim just walks back up on stage like, "Okay, let's get back to business." Within seconds, there's this mob riot goes on. People are up on stage trying to beat us up. I remember just seeing Jimmy with his bass in his hand by the neck and just swinging it, just swinging it all over the place. And I remember somebody got a microphone, and I got hit in the head with a microphone. I see people come at me, so now I got my cymbal stands, and I'm just swinging people. I'm just swinging to just keep people away. Yeah. And then at the last, I look over, and Tony's trying to keep peace and trying to, protect what he could on stage. And then all of a sudden I didn't see Tony anymore. And they had those steel bay doors for these auditoriums, and they let it down just to protect us from the crowd. Jeez. And so they were like, what the hell's happened? So during this riot part, Op IV and Offspring, they're gone. Yeah. There's like, who knows what the hell happened? I mean, they just took off. They weren't going to stick around for this. Sure. And so now we're gathering up our equipment, and we're like, where's Tony? I don't know. Well, let's get out of here. So we get all of our stuff, and then me, Jim, and John, and whoever was with us, we go meet up at a bar somewhere, just kind of decompress and think, what the hell just happened? And we still had no idea what happened to Tony. Sure. And I don't think it was until the next day that we find out that he got a full beer can thrown at his face, point blank, and it split his lip wide open. Uh-huh. So he was in the emergency room the whole time. Shit. And if you next time you see Tony, you can see he still has a scar on his lip. Oh man. So that was it. We just kind of, that didn't go very well. And, that was the return of Ill Repute. So we just didn't even talk to each other. I mean, we literally didn't play again for another couple years. Yeah, but then in the early 90s, you guys start playing, like, it has to be before Big Rusty Balls comes out, right? You guys are getting all this traction and playing Mogs and killing it in like Ventura. Yeah, so what happens is the next couple, so a couple years goes by again, and Tony calls me up one day, and he says, "Hey, I got all these new songs. You want to jam?" And around the same time, I think John said, "Hey, I got these songs too. Let's start jamming." And I thought, all right, well, let's just call Jimmy also. And then we just started up with a whole new, the whole Big Rusty Balls era of songs. And we determined as a band that we weren't going to be a rock band anymore. punk rock had progressed, dramatically just in that 4 or 5 year break that we had in recording. So we ended up playing a lot of the songs from the Big Rusty Balls album before it was recorded.
Right.
Now, one of the things, so we're playing Mogs, and we were still playing locally. We weren't going to LA or anything. We just played in Ventura. I remember we opened for Green Day somewhere along the line in Ventura at the old Pussycat Theater, which doesn't even exist anymore, over on Santa Clara Street. So we're doing shows and trying to figure out how these songs. We're basically arranging a whole new album. Now, the very first song on the album, of Big Rusty Balls, is called "Hold On." The original version of that, and this is one you were talking to John about, I have that original version, and the version was actually called "Stand," and the lyrics were really more about standing for peace instead of standing for violence.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same exact music, and we had recorded this demo tape with Jerry Finn. So we did 4 songs on the demo tape, and by the time we went in the studio to do Big Rusty Balls, Tony says, "No, I got a whole new vocal pattern." And we changed the song lyrics. I mean, the music was still the same.
Sure.
But we hooked up with Jerry because Jerry had a punk rock band. What was the name of their band? It was kind of like more of a psychedelic rock band. Jerry was a really good drummer, but he was going to recording school at that time, and when we were getting ready to record, I think John was hanging out with Jerry a lot, and says, "Hey, well, let's ask Jerry Finn and see if he'll do it." We offered Jerry $100 to record us. and so he took it, and since he had connections with studios, he would get us in, but we'd have to go like in off hours when nobody else was recording and stuff. So
sure.
we recorded the demo, and we kind of shopped that demo around, and that's how we got on Doctor Strange. And he was like, "Sure, I'll take you guys." And also Fat Mike had got a copy of it, and he wanted to produce this as well. And for us, it was a hard decision, but it wasn't really that hard. I mean, look back and think, wow, we could have been one of Fat Mike, we could have been on Fat Records, in the earlier days, but they were the early days of Fat Records, so we didn't know. And plus, it was a guy that used to open for us. I mean, NoFX used to open for us, and NoFX had gotten big, but we didn't know the value of Fat Mike's record producing talents. And so we thought, well, let's just go with Doctor Strange, because he already had a couple other bands. He was doing Voodoo Glow Skulls, and he had just signed Face to Face, I think, for their first LP. And so we went with Doctor Strange, and we were happy with that. I mean, we were happy with working with Jerry again. I think he created the magic on that Big Rusty Balls album. I think I listen to that album quite often. I think the production's very good. I think the songwriting's good.
Jamie Just, 6 songs.
Jamie Just, yeah. I remember Jim wrote that, and I think a lot of the songs on there, it really showcased Tony as a better singer, and John's guitar playing was so much better as well. So we were really excited about that. I remember when we took the picture for the Big Rusty Balls, I remember we had to climb a fence and because those Big Rusty Balls were over on Harbor Boulevard, and we had to go over a barbed wire just to get in there, and where it spray painted Big Rusty Balls, that was real spray paint. It wasn't photoshopped at all. Yeah. So we had a great time recording that again, practicing for it, and then we started getting a lot more shows with that, and we thought, okay, this is it. We're gonna do this again. We're a band, and we're gonna do this.
Yeah, and then you just take off and play some more, and then break up. It didn't last that long,
exactly,
right?
Yeah. Well, that was that whole thing with the Portland trip and the tour and John going surfing.
So
and,
what's your take on it?
Well, I remember vividly, we're sitting down and said, hey, we're going to get these shows. And I remember John just saying, hey, I've got these plate tickets to Europe. And we're like, we just came out with this album. So why would you make these plans? Because we want a tour. And it wasn't like he was just gonna be gone for a week or so. I mean, it was like a month, and it was like it was right after the album had gotten released in 2 weeks. Well, this is the formula, this is how it is. And he says, yeah, but I've got non-refundable tickets, and he told us that. And John had always gone to Europe, for the part of the summer in the 4 or 5 years that we didn't go playing, which was fine.
Right.
But now that we had a new album, there's a reason why we need to stick around for the summer. And he says, well, I need to go. And I remember the words was, well, and he was saying, so you guys are kicking me out of the band. And we said, no, we're not kicking you out of the band. You're making a choice, and you're choosing to go to Europe now instead of, going on the road with us. And he felt it was an ultimatum. We just felt like he was making a choice. And we said, well, we're going to keep doing this. So we went to Portland, Oregon, for this huge punk festival. It was 3 days. I don't know how many bands played. I mean, probably, it was a mini, Lollapalooza, mini Warped Tour before they even had them.
Right.
And we played like right under, I think, Channel 3 on one of the days. I mean, we were pretty high up there, and we. There's probably 1,000 kids there, probably just wondering where the hell John is. And so we tried to pull it off with Tony as a lead singer.
Yeah, did you three-piece or did you get a rhythm guitar?
That show we did a 3-piece. Yeah. But then by the time we went on tour, we ended up getting Mike Vallejo from Circle One, and we tried out a bunch of other different guitarists, and it didn't pan out. I mean, we tried our best. Tony did a great job. I mean, I think.
So you did a tour though?
Yeah, so we did a tour. We went all the way to the East Coast.
Oh, geez.
We went from here we did 2 separate tours. So we did the western half of the United States. We went all the way up to Seattle and looped back down through Colorado, back to, I think, West Texas, like El Paso, back home.
And that's the 3-piecing one with the
so
Portland show on it?
That one we did with Mike Vallejo.
Okay, so the Portland was a one-off, and then you did the West.
Yeah, the Portland was a one-off, came home, and then we did a tour again.
Okay.
And I think when we came home, well, no, okay, so we did a tour in 2 halves. So we did the western half first, came home again, and then we were getting ready to go for the eastern half of the United States. John was home by that time. Mm-hmm. And I had a conversation with John years later, and he said he would have gone on tour with us. But I think at that time there was egos in play, and we were waiting for the first person to apologize.
Right.
And nobody ever did, so we ended up going without John. But, hearing from John later on, he admitted that he would have gone if we had asked.
Yeah.
But we never asked, and so we went on the second half, and that was all the way across to Texas, straight up from Texas all the way to Minnesota, across Minnesota to New York and Connecticut, then all the way down the eastern seaboard down to Florida, and then come home. And so that tour was going okay. We had a big show. We had a couple big shows. I remember one in Oklahoma and one in Connecticut. Those were probably the 2 biggest shows. And met up with Billy Joe from Green Day, came and saw us in Minnesota. So that was kind of cool. He had stayed at my house earlier in the year, so he kind of knew that we were going to be in Minnesota. He was going to be in Minnesota at the same time, so he came and saw us. Jimmy and I had a falling out in Minnesota, and I wanted to come home. I just wanted to stop the tour. It wasn't going well. We were starting getting shows canceled because they started getting word that John wasn't with us. So a lot of promoters started pulling out, and, we did our best we could as a band, but by that time, my son was at home. His he was already 7 or 8 at this time. His mother, who was supposed to be watching him, I had already divorced, she wasn't doing a very good job watching him. So I'm worried about him the entire time too. So, coming home, I just thought, I need to take care of my son.
Yeah.
This wasn't working out for me anymore. It wasn't fun. That was really what it was. It just wasn't fun anymore.
And so you leave the band.
So I left the band at that time. Yeah.
And then, what do you play with them again? They get back together in like 2000 to do some one-off shows.
So during that 2000 time, they wanted to do a reunion show or a benefit show for. It was either for Henry, when Henry Knowles passed away, or Mark Hickey. It was one of those two. I think it was Henry. They were going to do. They wanted to get together for a reunion show. So I'm thinking, okay, I'll do it. And so we start practicing. And it was me and Tony and John, and we get this other guy, Fred Dixon, to play bass, which I had just met Fred. And we only play the old stuff. We're just basically playing the 7-inch and the What Happens Next album. We just go through, and we're just playing. We're just practicing these songs, and we were having so much fun. We were just sort of laughing. We were showing up for practice and just trying our best to get through these songs, and it was starting to sound really good. And then someone was going to book us for a reunion show, Return of Ill Repute show, opening for Guttermouth at the Ventura Theater. So at that time, Jimmy gets wind that we're playing again, and so he says, "Hey, why aren't you having me play in the band?" And so we talked to him and we say, "Hey, okay, well, if you're going to show up for practice and here's where we're going to be, with your equipment, then, we'll see how it goes." So now the 4 of us practiced a couple times, and I'll admit it sounded really good. We were just better.
Yeah.
So then what happened was the show got canceled, or something happened at the Ventura Theater and they couldn't do it that night. And it got moved to a different venue. And then that show got canceled. And at that time, I was just like, tried, it sounded good, but I'm not going to keep putting this effort in to something that I don't know where this is going. There's reports. And at that time I had become, I don't want to call it religious, but I became a student of the Bible at that time. And that just became my focus, and I was attending, our Bible fellowship regularly. And then I was remarried, and that just became my whole focus. And then playing in the band wasn't a priority anymore. And even though those practices were fun, when things just started falling apart, I really just thought it was revelation from God that I didn't need to be playing with them anymore. Now that's the truth. I just felt like, okay, these are signs. The first time, maybe it's
God told me not to rock.
Yeah, exactly. Take a break from these guys right now. And then that's where they found Chuck later on. And I've always supported them. Even though we moved away, even back when I was still living down there, whenever Ill Repute would play, I'd always try to show up. Became really close with Chuck. There's no hard feelings. We talk all the time. I'm really proud of Chuck, and he's kept my style in most of the drumming, at least 95% of it. I mean,
he's such an unsung hardcore hero.
Yeah. No, he is. And when I watch him play, I mean, some of these songs, like I said, like with Wayward or some of these other songs, I'll listen and I'll watch how he plays it. And I'm thinking, hey, he got that part really. I mean, he's almost doing exactly what I would have done, which, not that I'm saying it was really hard, but he had done that. He didn't try to make the songs his own. He really tried to play the songs in the Ill Repute style and really in my style of drumming, which I think is the reason why they still sound very good to this day, because he's just still there. They didn't try to slow it down for him or anything like that.
Well, yeah, and you have to play the wild beat, right? Like you can't just do a straight fast beat on some of those songs. It just doesn't work. It just doesn't work.
Right. So
no, and
so yeah,
that's amazing for him to come in and be selfless like that, and it's weird to be the new Ill Repute guy, right? When he's been in the band for almost 20 years now.
exactly. And he's still a new guy. The one thing I've always appreciated about these guys too, especially Tony, is that he's kept me involved with what I call the business side of Ill Repute. Like when the documentary and the book were being written and developed, Tony and I had talked about doing a book years before that. And so we had gotten a lot of notes down together because he at the time when he was still talking to Doug Moody, Doug, said, "Hey, I want to do an Ill Repute book." So Tony knew that I would have the stories and the memory. So there was a few weekends in a row where Tony would just hang out and we would hang out and we just start writing the stuff down and figuring, what happened here, what happened there, and, what happened next, no pun intended,
Yeah.
but it's kind of like what we did. So he kept me on the business side of things. So then when the documentary was being developed by Stan, Tony would call me and say, "Hey, this guy wants to do a book and documentary. Else, you want to meet with us here?" And so, I would go and meet with him. So he kept me involved with that. Then with the Netflix shows Glow and Stranger Things, he's keeping me involved with that. So now we've got Head of Steam going. And then when the documentary came out, I remember Jeff Hershey was saying how he'd love to get this thing promoted, at a high level. And at the time when I was working at the city of Ventura, one of my coworkers happened to be the mayor or a council member at the city of Port Hueneme. And I don't remember if I came up with the idea or Jeff came up with the idea. He goes, "Hey, is there a way you can get like a key to the city or something like that?" And I said, "I don't know if you can get key to the city, but they have these things called proclamations, and they give these out to people who do significant things for the community." So I talked to the council member. His name was Ellis Green, and he and I were pretty close at the city of Ventura. I said, "Hey, I got a personal question. You're on the council. Would you consider giving our band a proclamation?" And he says, "Well, what for?" He didn't know anything about punk rock. So I start giving him the whole history of Ill Repute and how we all grew up in the area, and it created this whole music scene. And, now they're doing a book and a documentary on us. So it would be really cool. So he ends up talking to the council, and one of the the mayor at the time, his name was John Sharkey, was an old rocker and knew who we were. I mean, he was an older guy. I mean, he's got to be like in his early 70s now, and he was just like, so he was excited. And so Ellis tells me, a couple weeks later, work he goes, "Okay, write something up. We'll get it through council and I'll give you a date." And then he says, "Okay, you got an exact date, April 7th. We're going to give you a proclamation." So we get there, and I have video of that, and the council chambers was packed. I mean, it was so packed that we found out that from friends who showed up a little late and were just hanging out outside, out there on Ventura Road, because they couldn't get in.
Yeah.
I mean, it was literally standing room only. I remember one of the council members saying, "I've never seen so many tattoos in my life." But to me, so my point was that Tony had always kept me involved with those kind of things.
Yeah, well, to finish that story, Carl, that's when the first Ill Repute Day got called, right?
Right.
Yeah, just so because not everyone that listens to the pod knows everything.
Right, yeah. So that became the Ill Repute Day, April 7th, 2014. Tony had special buttons made, and they gave us a proclamation basically commending us for our musical achievements, in creativity, in the city of Port Hueneme.
Right. So now every
April 7th,
April 7th is Ill Repute Day.
Is Ill Repute Day, right? And it is kind of I don't want to say it's cheesy, but it's kind of cool that we got this proclamation, and we think, how many bands get a proclamation?
I don't think it's cheesy at all. It's so rad.
Yeah. So that was exciting. that was exciting. And then the official documentary and book come out that same year. I mean, months later. So it's now, I'm kind of connected with the band without playing with the band anymore, and that still just became satisfying to me. I mean, they're doing their thing, and I keep track of them. I try to see them when I can, but I'm pretty content where I'm at now too.
Well, you moved.
Yeah, so we moved so I got remarried, and I moved up here to San Jose, and whenever a hardcore band comes through the Bay Area, I always go and see them. Seen the Grim up here. I'm trying to think. Stalag 13 played here not too long ago. Fist Fight on Ecstasy was here a couple times. I went out and saw them. Not a hardcore band. Walk Proud, who was instrumental in our return in the early 90s, played up here. I went and saw them. I'm really close with Jeff Hershey. So whenever Night Demon comes up to the Bay Area, I go see them as well.
Drink from the chalice.
Yeah.
Shout out Jeff.
Yeah. So,
Jarvis, my bad.
Yeah. So whenever bands like that come here, Dr. No played up here not too long ago. Went and saw them at Gilman Street. So just still try to see them. I started drumming in a Scottish bagpipe band, in a competitive Scottish bagpipe band as a on their drum corps.
Well, that's pretty rad.
Yeah. So that that's like the hardest drumming I've ever done. I have to practice to be good at it. And then the other side thing I've done musically, I started teaching at School of Rock.
Oh, cool.
So there's a School of Rock that's literally about less than 2 miles from my house. And that was my way of giving back to kids. I mean, these are kids from 7 to 17 in varied levels of talent. And all the other instructors are like working musicians and stuff. And even when they asked me why I want to work there, I said, well, I got a regular day job, but this is what I've done musically. And I just want to be around and teach kids what it's like to be in a band. So whenever they get squirrely, I sit them down and I tell them old man story time. And I tell them the stories of Ill Repute and what it was like to be forming a band, getting on, being on the radio, making records, touring, sleeping in the back of a van or a pickup truck, and having riots, start at a show that you're at. Some of the kids are really talented. Will be professional musicians some days, and other kids are just there. Parents drop them off, and we end up babysitting them for an hour or so. But it's fun. I mean, it's great to see these kids do these songs and pull them off really well. We had a girl in our school a couple years ago. There's a international competition called Hit Like a Girl. It's a drum competition, and she actually won it.
Oh, right.
It came from our school, so so it's kind of cool. So there's some good talent coming out there, and so I usually I've been teaching there 2 or 3 nights a week after work, just for a couple lessons. I'll give private lessons to some drummers, and then we do group lessons as well, and we just do some depending on the age level, we'll do some songs, easy songs, hard songs, from all different eras of rock. And so it's funny to try to see a 10-year-old kid try to play Blink 182 or, Face to Face or, something like that. So
sure.
It's, but you teach them just their role in a band and how you have to start listening to each other.
I think I would have them play that song, the I don't want to work. I just want to bang on the drum all day.
I don't think we've ever played that song.
That should be the first song, and see if they're committed or not.
Yeah, exactly.
See if they give you that look.
One of the punk songs that we do for all of our beginner bands is we do Blitzkrieg Bop.
Perfect, great song.
Yeah. No, this is great, and it's the Ramones, so it's pretty basic, beat and with basic chord structure. So we teach them that, and we just teach them how to how to listen to each other. I tell my drummers now that the role of the drummer in a band is just to keep the band together. That's, all these fancy fills and all that. Don't worry about that. Start together, end together. Make sure you're going into breaks together. That's your role as a drummer. So that's been pretty satisfying. So that's what I've been doing musically lately.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's good to still be involved. So
yeah. And I'll get in the band again someday. I always joke with Tony. Before I moved up here 5 years ago, when we started Mother of Dissension,
mm-hmm.
that was fun. To me, that was just an extension of the Big Rusty Balls era.
Sure.
With a new guitarist and bassist, and Randy Miller on guitar and Michael Jones on bass. I mean, those guys were very talented and had done a lot of different bands. Tony was coming off with the Loads, and this was basically my return to the Nardcore scene. And we had a lot of fun with that, recording and play. I was thinking of places we played all over, Oxnard area, but we had a show up in Lompoc or Paso Robles once, and we even played Las Vegas. So, we played LA a couple times too. I think if we were younger, I think that band would have really taken off. Then, my wife and I moved up here to be closer to our kids and our grandkids. So that was a decision I made, and I don't regret it at all. But I really enjoyed creating music with Tony again, and I think Tony's one of the best songwriters that I'll ever meet.
There's plenty of time. You can do another band 10 years from now. I don't think neither of you guys are going to stop, right? Why stop now?
Yeah, exactly. And we'll move back to the 805 area. Probably when I retire from work in a few years. I plan on retiring in 3 years, so still young enough that I'm going to go down there. I'll get together with Tony again, and we'll start another band. We had toyed with the idea of an acoustic band before Mother of Dissension took off. Tony and I were practicing to do an acoustic gig. We had found out that other, former punkers like Kevin Seconds was doing acoustic stuff, and Tony really liked it. And we were practicing a lot of our old Ill Repute stuff as an acoustic duo, and it was fun. And, we were rearranging it to work out. And at the time, he was still playing with the Loads, so he didn't have a lot of time to commit to it. But it was something that we had worked on for, I'd say for a good 6 weeks or so. We were meeting regularly, and so we'll be in a band together again. Yeah, we will. And so it's never over. I still have my drum set in my bedroom here, and I've got all my equipment. So I'll get back into it again.
Do you have any other gaps or anything that you feel like we missed?
I'm trying to think. No, not really. I mean, it was a lot of fun. Like I said, creating and spending time with those guys. I remember the first time I went to punk rock bowling with John. I think it was in 2011. Maybe it might have been 2012. It was my first time going to punk rock bowling, and the first time John and I had been in a car together in probably almost 20 years, and just getting caught up over a 3-day weekend. John and I had spent, out of a 72-hour period, I think we spent 70 of those hours together. Just getting caught up with everything. And, Jim and I are good now, and we've been talking a little bit lately, just communicating Ill Repute stuff. Tony and I, we still spending time. Whenever my wife and I go down to the 805, Tony and Don are, the top 2 or 3 people we're calling outside of our family. They're coming up here actually to the San Jose area to spend his wife's birthday up here. So, we still get together. And, no, I think as far as the band years go, I think we covered up a lot of ground there.
Cool. So the people like it when I ask, do you feel like you've been well represented?
Yeah.
Okay, good, Carl.
And I'll be honest. The first time I heard your podcast with Tony, and then you just asked all these drumming questions. I really felt like, almost a tear came to my eye because the way Tony represented it. But I appreciated your asking. I know one thing I was going to mention too was in those early years when we were just trying to figure out the band, and I was trying to figure out drumming. I do want to give a shout out to the original Nardcore drummer buddies, which I had, which was me, Larry White, Rick Heller, Harry Meisenheimer, and even Mark Aber. I spent, when we were at shows and parties, I didn't know a lot of people really, so I just kind of gravitated to the other drummers. And even though the 4 or 5 of us had such different styles, we all had such a great respect for each other and learned a lot from each other. I remember having like just drum conversations with all 4 of those guys over the, during those 2 or 3 years where everything was just, during those classic years of the Nardcore scene. Those guys were just as instrumental to my drumming development as anybody else.
Sure. I think that's a great thing to bring up. That was good to get that in there.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, Carl, thanks so much for doing this.
All right, Zach. Thanks for calling, and we'll keep in touch.
Yeah, I'll circle with you to give you updates on this.
All righty.
All right,
take
buddy.
care.
Talk to you. Goodbye.
All right. Bye.
Now, like most interviews, usually I'll do an interview and someone will hit me up right after and be like, "Oh, fuck, I remembered all this stuff, I want to talk about." But because I love talking to Carl so much, I let him come back on, and I was going to try to be all slick and edit this shit so you wouldn't notice, but you guys are too smart for that, man. So here's a break, and then bring back Carl for to wrap this up. We're going to go for another 45 or so. All right, we're recording.
Okay, so a couple things I wanted to share was, I wasn't into punk rock, but I think I needed to start being more familiar with the scene and going to shows more. And I just remember my very first punk rock show was at the Goleta Valley Community Center. I don't recall what year it was, probably 81. Maybe 82, but I doubt it. It was probably 81. My very first punk rock show was Black Flag and Channel 3.
Wow.
And,
it was all downhill from there.
Yeah, exactly.
Until you saw Minor Threat.
Right, exactly. So I can't even recall which singer that would have been at that era, but I remember going to that show, and I probably didn't get a chance to really enjoy it so much because I was just so scared.
Yeah.
I had heard stories of them just beating guys up who just didn't have shaved heads. Mm-hmm. And I would, I just hid behind Tony the entire time. And Tony's such a good friend. He's kind of protect me. Okay, stand here. Don't look at guys in the eye. that kind of thing. So that was kind of memorable. And then I remember my first LA show. I don't exactly know who was playing. I remember seeing Bad Brains and Bad Religion in one of those earlier shows.
And they played together?
Yeah, I'm thinking so.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. So, then that's it's kind of weird that it was a waste to a guy like me who really didn't even know this punk rock history that I was being attached to and seeing these bands. And once again, this is my first time now in LA and being more concerned about being scared than enjoying the scene and the music. And I remember the Riot Squad ended up showing up. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure how or why. And I find 2 guys that I knew from Oxnard who were bigger than me, who I'm hiding behind. And the funny thing is, these 2 guys are the sweetest and funniest guys that you'll ever know. And one was Ruben Sanchez, and the other one was Ismael Hernandez.
Okay.
So I'm thinking, I didn't know Ismael that much, but I'm thinking that this is the guy I'm going to hide behind so the cops don't come beat me up.
Yeah. That's awesome.
So, but one of the things I wanted to share too, I remember going to the Santa Monica Civic Show, the classic one that had the Black Flag reunion, the Misfits, original Misfits, and the Vandals. That was the lineup. So that was the infamous Black Flag show where everybody in Black Flag played that night.
Yeah.
And they played the era of the songs where they sang. So they opened up with the Keith Morris era.
Sure.
And then they went into Chavo. Dez sang a few songs, and then Henry finished it out. So the notable thing about that night was, we used to hang out with the Circle One guys a lot. And I guess Circle One, a lot of times, and I'm not sure how or why, but they would get free tickets to shows. And I think it was the promoter's way of trying to keep peace. Like, if we give you, basically John Macias and your friends, tickets to show, then you're not going to cause trouble, and actually you're going to help keep peace at the show.
Right.
So at the Santa Monica Civic Show, they didn't give him tickets.
Oh, shit.
So John's like, he's talking to all of us that were part of this group. I don't want to call it a gang, but those of us who were with him that night said, okay, we're going to rush the doors.
Awesome.
So here's what we're going to do. We're going to stay in line like we have a ticket. And when I give the signal, we're just going to run in. And basically it's every man for themselves at that point.
Yeah.
So I'm a smaller guy, and we're in line. And there was another guy who I believe his name was John also. I don't know his last name. And he, he's kind of, don't worry, Carl, I got you. And I'm hanging on to the back of his belt loop of his pants.
Okay.
So we're all kind of walking in like we have tickets. And all of a sudden, someone must have given the signal, and everybody starts running in. So I'm holding on to him, and I'm getting through the first wave of security. And now we're in the lobby, and all we need to do is get into the crowd, and then there's no way they're going to find us.
Right.
So we're getting ready to open the doors into the auditorium itself. And right when John grabs the door, somebody comes out at the same time and slams the door open and hits John right in the head and knocks him out.
Oh, jeez.
So John's laying on the ground. I remember this, and I'm going to pick him up. And right when I'm going to pick him up, I see, 3-4 bouncers coming right our way. He's pretty much knocked out. And I let him go, and I was like, I'm sorry, John. And I let him go, and I run into the crowd. I mean, I'm kind of a dick pussy move, but I was like, what am I going to do? I'm already in. He's already knocked out. They're going to, I figured this is the way it goes.
Yeah.
So fast forward a number of years. So Ill Repute goes through their eras of breaking up. We do the transition stuff, Riot Show breaks out, we get back together, and now we're trying to make our comeback. And
this
we're
is
playing
leading up to Big Rusty Balls.
Yeah, this is like right around the Big Rusty Balls, but right before Big Rusty Balls era.
Okay.
And we're playing down in Norwalk with the Walk Proud guys all the time. There were these two girls, Kim and Peggy, that I used to hang out with during this era all the time. I'd go down to they're from Long Beach, but they knew the guys in Walk Proud. We'd go to parties down there. They would take me to raves. I don't even know where they would take me. They would come up to Wainini and hang out with the band there. So one night, they take me to this party, and I'm not sure where it was at. And we walk the party, and the entire party is just dimly lit. I mean, very, very low lit. And I start looking around. I kind of get this weird vibe. And I start looking around, and everybody there just seemed like they were a gang member.
Okay.
And I'm looking, and I'm sensing now that everybody's looking at me, because this is after an era that we hadn't played in a while. And I'm thinking, oh, shit, this is the night I'm going to die. I really felt like, because I walk in with these two girls, and everybody's looking at me like, who the hell are you walking into our party with our girls?
Yeah.
I mean, that was the sense I got. So nobody, everybody's just dogging me the whole time. So I find a corner in the living room, and I just kind of duck away while Kim and Peggy are socializing or drinking or whatever. I'm just kind of sitting here, and I'm thinking, okay, I mean, I'm really praying, God, if this is the way I'm going to die, don't let it hurt. I'm just really thinking that they were going to string me up that night. It was, looking at me funny and, bumping into you and just thinking, what the fuck are you doing here?
Right.
So the girls kind of sense what's going on. And instead of just introducing me to everybody, which would have made it a lot easier, we go through this whole, almost like a theatrics of explaining why I'm there.
Mm-hmm.
So these guys start talking about classic punk rock shows that they've been to.
Okay.
And one guy mentions the Olympic Auditorium with Bad Religion.
Mm-hmm.
So Kim or Peggy, one of them, just kind of mentioned to me, he said, "Hey, Carl, didn't you guys play that night?" And I got my head down. I said, "Yeah, we played." And so one of the guys comes up and goes, "What? You were in a band?" And the girl says, "Yeah, this is Carl, the drummer from Ill Repute." And they're looking at me, "No way." "Oh, well, yeah, I am." And the guy starts listing all of these songs. "What? Like Cherokee Nation, Clean Cut American Kid, Fuck With My Head." "Yeah, those are our songs." And next thing you know, the guy starts reciting Book and Its Cover.
Yes.
Okay, so then the whole party's starting to sing Book and Its Cover to me. And literally by the end of the night, I'm arm in arm with these guys, and they're thinking, and they're telling me, "Carl, you want to come party with us whenever you want. You can leave Kim and Peggy at home. You're one of us now."
That's it.
I mean, it was 180 degrees from when I came into that door thinking I was really just going to die or get beat up to where I was these guys' best friends. That was one of the few times that being in Ill Repute really helped, I guess, build my credibility.
Yeah, well, a lot of times, people refer to punk and hardcore as, it's that secret handshake.
Well, it is. And years later, so now we fast forward probably another 10 years. I'm married, I have a kid, live in the house in Ventura, away from the scene for many, many years. And there was a guy that lived next door to me that we'll say he was associated with a disreputable motorcycle gang. Mm-hmm. And we all knew, the whole neighborhood knew the guy had been in and out. And he never really talked to me at all. And his parents lived next door to me, really. And one day we're both out in the front yard at the same time, and he sees my car. And my license plate since 1984 has been IR Drummer. Okay. I've had the same license plate since 1984. I've moved it probably on about 8 or 9 different cars. And he looks at it, he goes, "IR Drummer, what's that supposed to mean? You a drummer?" I go, "Yeah, I'm a drummer." He goes, "Well, what's that IR stand for?" I go, "I was the Ill Repute drummer." He goes, "Really? I love you guys." So from that point on, he was always like really super cool to me. Yeah. He would stop conversations. Like one time he was on the phone talking to whoever, and I pull up and I hear him say, "Hold on a second, my neighbor just drove up." He goes, "Hey, Carl." And I go, so it was kind of funny, but it's cool. And he was always really cool to me. One of the other things I just kind of wanted to talk about that I didn't want to go really unnoticed, and that's our relationship with Jerry Finn when he did the Big Rusty Balls for us, the Big Rusty Balls album, because Jerry was just, he was just making his way. He had his band; they were called Wonderbug, but he wanted to go to recording school. But Jerry had ended up, worked with every pop punk band that ever existed, and the way a lot of you guys who grew up around that era, he revolutionized pop punk. I mean, not only did he do Green Day and the Muffs, and Rancid, but he did Blink-182. I mean, he was so instrumental in our Big Rusty Balls era that he went from recording, he figured out how to record punk rock digitally, which was unheard of at that time. Actually, our demo tape, he recorded analog, and he was just dead set against digital. He said, "No, we're doing this analog because that's a better cleaner, warmer sound, and it's just the best way to record. This digital stuff isn't going to go anywhere. So he said that from the time we went from there to the time we recorded the album, he said, "Oh no, we're doing it digital. I found some stuff out," and so he kind of did everything digital. I remember going into the studio once with him when he was mixing the muffs and seeing him perform his magic in post-production and bending notes digitally just so it would, fit with the music. And then when he died years later after that, it was a shock to me. And I found a blog that guys in Blink-182 were writing on. So me and I think it was Tom were emailing each other for a couple of weeks just reminiscing about Jerry. And during that time, I had spent a lot of time with Jerry during our recording sessions. He was spending the night. I was spending the night at his house. We were going to parties. We were going to concerts.
Well, you paid him $100. You deserve it all.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. He owed it to us, right? Yeah. I remember one time going to see a show with Jerry, and we were going to go see a Kiss tribute band. Jerry was a huge Kiss fan. But one of the opening bands was, I don't know who they were. It was just this horrible heavy metal band. I remember Jerry turning to me and he said, "I can't believe I just wasted my hearing on these guys." As a record engineer, producer, hearing is everything. Mm-hmm. And he was so upset that they were so horrible that he had to listen to those guys. But that was so funny. Those are just some of those highlights. I think one of the other highlights I was thinking of was the very first time that we heard Clean Cut American Kid on the radio. Mm-hmm. We were hanging out with these girls up in Ojai. I don't remember if Jim and John were there at the party, but I know Tony was there for sure.
I think John was, because I think John told the story.
Yeah. So we're just sitting there and we're just talking. And I remember when I heard it with them that night, I just remember turning to Tony and I said, "God, I keep hearing Clean Cut American Kid in my head." And he said, "So do I." And then we kind of looked around the radio, we see this radio and this staticky version of Clean Cut American Kids being played on the radio. And it was almost like that scene from That Thing You Do, where you're just running around the house. We're on the radio. And, that to me, of all the things we've ever done musically, that's definitely and probably one of the top 2 or 3 highlights. The first time you hear yourself on the radio, and it's not just like some small college radio, some punk kid playing, it was on Rodney on the Rock, which at the time was, the biggest punk rock show that existed, and that we were actually being played on there. And to me, what makes that so much more memorable, I guess, is that somebody else is controlling that. You can go and play a gig and you can actually throw your own gigs and you could come up with your own money and come out with an album. But when somebody else is playing you on the radio, that kind of made me feel like, okay, we've made it. That was a highlight there.
Yeah, a little bit of validation.
Yeah, that was certainly the validation of all that. So anyway, those are some of those highlight stories that went on. I did want to tell you this, so I finally just finished that podcast that you and Ryan did.
Uh-huh.
And it started to make me realize, because I wasn't around during this whole era at all. I mean, I was completely removed from the scene. And to hear your guys' story, which is kind of funny, because this is like when you guys were doing it was 16, 17, 18 years later than when we first started. Some of the things that you guys went through on tour were so similar to things that we went through too. And I was thinking, wow, I guess it really didn't evolve too much.
Yeah.
But just hearing your guys' story, and I feel bad that I didn't know you guys during that time. I didn't follow it. I remember the band name, which I was kind of glad that the scene was still kind of going, even though I wasn't part of it. But the fun you guys had with it, just, and all that, I was like, God, that was, and I will tell you, that was a very good interview.
Well,
So I
thank
didn't
you.
want to, I didn't want to, we share those kind of stories. And,
Yeah, we made
you
it about
know,
halfway through because we were chitter
yeah,
chatting so much. We made it up to the year 2001, so we got 3 more
right,
years to go.
right.
But yeah, it was funny actually because there was a tour and we ditched our drummer in Texas and drove home. And when I got home, I got a call from Tony like on my landline, and he's like, "That's so funny." Like he already like the story had like gotten back to Nard, and he's like, "That's so funny that you like ditched your drummer because like we did the same thing once, but it was with one of the roadies." He's
Right.
like, "Yeah, we ditched him and sent him home on a Greyhound." It was so funny that the story had already made it home, and like literally within a couple hours of me like getting home, Tony's calling on the phone. Ah, it was so
I
funny.
I was digging through some old stuff, maybe about a month ago or so, and I found a postcard that John had written to the band after we had kicked them out.
Oh, he sent it from France?
I think it was. I remember saying I think he did, and
He's like, I'm on the beach, have fun in the van, pussies.
no, the thing, no, it was actually the exact opposite.
Oh.
It was very heartfelt. It was like, hey, I'm sorry things didn't work out. I've kind of felt pressured into this. I don't do well with those kind of things, and really hope that everything works without. I hope everything works out with us in the end.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's
And I was
sweet.
thinking, yeah, no, it was very sweet, and that's kind of, I guess at the time it was happening, a lot of egos, a lot of things were being said. And I look back now, if we had really knew how hard that had to have been for John to have sent that to us.
Well, it goes back to you guys were friends before you were in a band, right? So
Right,
so there's a purity to your band that when you
right,
strip away all the bullshit, you're friends.
right,
And that was trouble I had with In Control because we went through so many members too, and members leave and your butt hurt over certain reasons, and it's like fuck. If I didn't have this band, I would have way more friends because why am I angry at all these people? Like it's only because of this band that I'm angry at everyone. So
right.
it's
No,
you got to strip that away and just people are people and those friends. If you strip away like the commitments you have to each other due to this like at the end of the day, it's a little bit of a business entity.
right.
Like you can enjoy them for who they are.
Yeah, it's kind of like, when I, was removed from the whole scene for many, mid 20 something years. And then like when John and I went to punk rock bowling in, 2011 or 12 or whatever that was. And we drove all the way out there. It was the first time that we'd even talked about life. I mean, here we are, we're in our 50s now, or approaching 50. And, and a whole bunch of life has already happened. So it's kind of like, how do we deal with that? I had already been married twice at
Yeah.
that time, and
Well, and
he was talking.
you can remember why you wanted to be around this guy in the first place, right? Like, why did you want to do a band together? Because you liked each other.
Yeah, yeah,
You know?
and we start, and it wasn't like we were just reminiscing over everything. We're talking about spiritual stuff, and John's very spiritual in that respect as well. We shared a lot of common stories about our maturity, basically.
Sure.
Because like when Jerry Finn died, John was close to Jerry too, but we never talked about that. We never talked about, it was like when I had my second marriage, I just removed myself from the whole scene. So I didn't, I sparingly saw John over those years. But when his dad died, I was at his dad's funeral.
Sure.
When Jimmy's dad died, I was at Jimmy's dad's funeral. So you're right. You remember that you were friends before or away from the band, and that you still just kind of you still enjoyed their company. You just had to have this band kind of got in the way of things as far as that goes. That's why I still love those guys very tenderly, and I try to keep in touch with them as much as possible. Have no hard feelings for where the band is gone, because this is what we did, and like you said, Chuck's moving it on, and I'm still involved in some respects from an outer rim, which is okay with me anyway.
Sure.
Yeah. And we have all these memories. We really do. Um, One of the things too is like you mentioned in your podcast about, getting that white whale of Doug Moody.
Mm-hmm.
That was another way I got back into the scene, was when our documentary started coming up. They really wanted Doug to be part of the documentary, and we also wanted Doug to give the rights to this. He wanted us to release the song so we could use them. At that point in time, even to this day, I am the only member of Ill Repute that Doug will talk to.
Oh.
He broke ties with Tony. He never liked Jimmy. Didn't want to talk to John. So so the producers and the developers of the documentary is like, well, he's got to talk to somebody. And they asked me, hey, can you try to talk to him? So I made contact with Doug, and I said, hey, I want to come down and visit you. I went down to wherever he's at, Vista or San Marcos.
Yeah, around there.
Around there.
Yeah, North County.
I went to his house. I spent all day at Doug's house, like literally like 8 hours, and just talking to him. He's telling me all these stories. He's telling me what he felt, what our problems were. I mean, he disclosed all kinds of different stuff to me. So it was kind of like, wow, this is like, so
well,
just got a lot out of him.
Yeah, you got to reach out to him, Carl, and tell him to come on the pod.
I will.
I've spoke to him several times, and I've met him before, so he should know who I am. But sometimes I think that some of the people that surround him, I don't know what they're looking for. I don't know if he always has the best people around him. So I think he's a little cautious about that stuff, and I wonder if he thinks he's walking into a trap that I'm gonna blast him on stuff, and I'm just looking to do a friendly interview because he's been in the music business for his entire life, and he's
exactly.
He's an 80-year-old man now, and his dad was in the industry, and I believe his grandfather as well, right? So
right.
So you have like going back to the turn of the 20th century, his family involved in music. Like I'd like to get all of it,
right?
And unfortunately, he's older now, and I don't mean to be morbid, but there's not going to
be too many more opportunities.
No, I would like to get the story down, and I'm not looking to, trap him into like asking about royalties and shit. I just, in that
hear his story.
Yeah, and the early time of Mystic is so crazy because he's throwing so much shit against the wall. Like in '83, he's not committed to punk yet. He's doing all sorts of stuff, and he's like on the front end of like doing the weird shaped records. Like, I don't know if you follow the 185 Instagram, but I have like most of that stuff, and he did that record for the Sharks. It's like the coolest packaging ever, with like the shark fin popping up. Like, it is absolutely amazing. So, he did a Fernando Valenzuela like picture. Oh,
I remember. Yeah, I did see that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know. It's just stuff that I would love to get a story. Like, how do you end up, in like 82, 83 doing a Fernando Valenzuela picture disc? Like, that's at the peak of his like popularity. Like, and it looks like it's a legit licensed record. Like, so it's like, is he so above the board on some records and so like below the board on some? Like, I don't know, but we gotta get the story.
Yeah. So he actually called me out of the blue. I'm thinking maybe a month ago, maybe 6 weeks ago. Mm-hmm. Just out of the blue.
Yeah.
He did. And basically the reason he called me was he wanted me to give the message out to everybody that he's still alive, and that all the, as much as everybody wants to bury him and all this other stuff, he actually said this, the more people are talking about him, it just keeps him and Mystic Records more alive.
That's great. That's cool.
That was the reason why he called me. He just left me a voicemail.
Yeah.
And he just said, that's it, Carl. I just want to let you know this. And, he said, you're the only one who I felt like I could trust and talk to. And every time they talk about me, I'm still alive. So you let everybody know that I'm still kicking.
Yeah. Well, I think this would be the perfect platform. So if you can help me get him on here, I would really
Yeah, and you're
appreciate it.
down there. You're probably not far from him at all.
No. I've met him before, and I would go
Yeah.
to him, or if he's more comfortable doing phone, I'll do whatever.
Right.
And I'll do it any time of day or night, like whatever he needs. I'll do it. If he wants $100, I'll give him $100. Whatever.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. No, I think that would be your definitely your great white whale.
yeah.
I want to share one really quick story, and I think John touched on this about recording.
Okay.
And he was trying to think of the song that I was struggling with, and just because it was just repetitive over and over again, and I kept losing my beat. Is when we were recording "Taking Care of Business."
Mm-hmm.
I remember that song because it's so vividly that I didn't do any drum fills really on that song, so it's hard for me to keep exactly where I am with the song, how many times we were, and so when we recorded that, we didn't do any scratch vocals with it. It was just me, John, or me, Jimmy, and Tony just trying to do all the rhythm tracks. So I'm playing the song fine. But then at the end of the song, whether we do the chorus 4 more times or 8 more times or whatever, I kept getting lost right at the end. Okay. And I would just lose concentration. I mean, I'm playing 99% of the song, and literally like in the last 20 seconds, I would just lose concentration and I couldn't finish the song. And I think we must have went through that track, the rhythm track. I don't know. Usually when we do a song, because we practice so much, and it was just, and it was still punk rock, we probably would do the rhythm portion or my recording of it 2-3 times at the max.
Sure.
And I'd say a lot of times it was really one take and we've got it. That song, I'm going to say at least 10 takes.
Wow.
And I'd say the first 9 of them, I just couldn't even finish it. And I remember we were playing, and they're like, "Carl, what the fuck's going on?" I go, "I don't know. And then I started getting mad at them. I was like, "Hey, you guys fuck up all the time, and I'm dealing with it. So, give me a break," kind of thing. So I remember we took a break, and I remember John and Tony and Jim, they're running me around the block at Mystic. Hey, let's just go for a jog. And we shake it all out of me. We do everything we could. And, we finally finished the song, but it was the most grueling recording session I had ever had, ever.
For a cover song.
Yeah, on a cover song. Yeah. Exactly. That, played it hundreds of other times, but just couldn't get through that one session for some reason.
That's how it is in the studio.
Yeah, yeah.
You get one little hiccup and you can't get past it.
Yeah, and it's weird because there's other stuff I've let go. Like even on Clean Cut American Kid, to this day, I really don't like listening to it on the radio because during one fill, I hit a drum mic. and it's there. So I challenge any drummer out there to hear it because I think a drummer would hear it. But there's just like, I do this drum and then you hear this click. Right, just click. I mean, and I remember hearing it in the mix, and I remember sitting there with Robbie Fields and the band. I'm like, "Hey, I think I just hit a drum mic there," and they're like, "Don't worry about it." I think, really, this is like we're spending, I don't know how much they spent on us, but you're going into a recording studio to do one song, so we're there all day for one song, and you're gonna let me get away with hitting a drum mic? I think. All right. So, and on Cherokee, I hit a drum mic also. Okay. But we let that go as well. So I hear them because I know exactly where they're at, but maybe they're just buried in, punk rock lore now.
People just want to slam, Carl.
That's true.
At the end of the day, they just want to slam.
Yeah, they do. And then I don't know if I ever shared the story about when the first iteration of a 3-piece that Ill Repute might have had to do at a huge show was we were playing the Olympic Auditorium. I'm not sure which show it was, but I think it was UK Subs. But it was a huge show. And we were supposed to be the opening band.
What year do you think this is?
Probably 84.
Okay.
I think what happens next was definitely out already.
Okay.
So we were going to be the opening band, but Jimmy was late for the show. So we had always, because we only, I was the only one who had a car really that could go to LA regularly. And so we always traveled together.
Okay.
We just always, it was just a pact. We're going together. There wasn't even an option. So for some reason, this show, Jimmy ended up going with his brother.
Okay.
So a bunch of people from Oxnard were, family members, we're going to go to the Olympic Auditorium. So me, John, and Tony are there. And we do the sound check without Jimmy, and we're all set up on stage, and promoters saying, "Hey, you guys got to go on." And I said, "Our bass player is not here," and we actually convinced the next band to go on before us, and it was a band called Raw Power from Italy.
Yeah, I love that band. Screams from the
so
gutter.
we made them open for us just because our bass player wasn't there. So they play, because I think they were going to borrow some equipment from us.
Okay.
So we said, well, then you guys got to play before us then. So
how good were they? Do you remember that? Do you remember their set?
They were good. I do remember them being good.
That's one of my favorite LPs of all time.
Okay.
Yeah, Raw Power, Screams from the Gutter, and it's probably 84-ish.
Okay, yeah. So they play, and now we're playing, and now we're going on. Jimmy's still not there.
Jesus.
So now we're thinking, John, you got to play bass. so John was going to play bass and sing. I mean, he literally had it ready to go. We're delaying as long as possible, and and the promoter's like, "No, you guys got to start playing." And so we're getting ready to play, and in the Olympic Auditorium during those days, those shows were massive.
Yeah.
I mean, easily 1,000 people are there.
You got to play the intro to Sleepwalking for like 10 minutes.
That's what I should have done. Well, anyway, so we're getting ready to play, and then we see this guy running from the back of the auditorium toward the stage, and it was Jimmy. And he finally got there, and I guess what happened was his brother got a speeding ticket on the way down. They were already running late, got a speeding ticket, so it became more late. Jimmy jumps on stage, and he does, then we go through the show. But I remember that being one of the highlights also is when we break into Cherokee Nation, and then the first break of, Cherokee people, hearing that entire auditorium singing along to that just brought chills. That was like, wow, this is crazy. This whole auditorium knows the lyrics of this song, and they're singing along with us.
That's sick.
So, so that was, that was just one of those other, notable times of just what it was like then. But to me, it was refreshing to hear your guys' podcast, because, like I said, I wasn't around for when you guys played. You guys were too young to even know what it was like when we played.
Yeah.
And you're just hearing these stories from us. And, when I'm talking about, my first show was Black Flag and Channel 3, whatever. Oh, yeah, I saw Bad Brains and Bad Religion play. I think it was Bad Brains, Bad Religion, and Social Distortion.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I said, playing a backyard party with Sin 34 and Suicidal Tendencies and Black Flag. Yeah, that's what we just did. And I think I look back now and it's like, wow, I really wish I had appreciated it more for what it was. Not just like our role in the whole development of this whole thing, but even just being attached to those bands. I remember playing a show at the T-Bird Rollerdrome. I don't know, it must have been 20 bands, but we played, but Circle Jerks played. And I remember playing, and Keith Morris was just sitting right next to me the entire time, just watching me play.
Mm-hmm.
Here, his drummer is one of my favorite, obviously, influences, but one of my favorite hardcore drummers of all time, and probably arguably one of the best hardcore drummers of all time.
Sure.
And he's watching me play and telling me that he thought I was great.
Yeah, just quit. You reach the apex. Well, this is the best day of my musical career. I'm out. I'm going out on top. Keith Morris said that was great.
Yeah, Keith Morris was great, and that was early on. I mean, that was, and I remember running into Ian MacKaye at one of the Stardust Ballroom shows, and just bumping into him. Apparently, he knew who I was, and he just said, "Hey, I heard your album. It sounds good."
Yeah. How
that was my interaction with him.
How many times did you see Minor Threat?
At least twice.
Yeah, and how good were they?
Oh, it was amazing. So I remember the Dancing Water show that we played with them, but they played the Cathay de Grand.
Okay.
And I remember, so by this time it was when the Out of Step album was out, and this is when they added the new bass player, and I can't remember what song it was. And they had this massive song list. It kind of reminded me of our old refrigerator box that we used to use in my old garage. We just had all our songs up there. They were going to play everything from the 7 inches to the Out of Step album.
Yeah.
And bass player started a song, but he started the wrong song. But it had the same bass line at the beginning as the other song. Okay. And they start going into it. And then I remember Ian just stopped and goes, "Hey, that was the wrong song." And I go, "Oh, okay." But, they're talking about the Cathay de Grand, where I don't even know if you could even fit 100 people in there. It was probably only 50 or 60 people, really.
Yeah.
And you're right on top of the band, and you're like right there. Like right there.
Yeah.
So so just being around that, I didn't realize what that really meant.
Sure. Well, you're living it.
Yeah.
You're living it. Yeah. It doesn't, everyone perspective, you get it in the future.
Right.
Right. That's how you can figure out if you're doing something important or something completely insignificant. You ended up on the lucky side.
I remember a story that John shared with me years later. So we're making our comeback after Big Rusty Balls era, and he's talking to Fat Mike, and NoFX had already made a couple albums, had done some tours, so they're pretty popular at that time, and John was pretty much downplaying our significance, our insignificance in the whole punk rock scene, and and Fat Mike's like, "No way, you were that band that was playing Cathay de Grand on a Tuesday night at 1:00 in the morning. You guys kept things good. You guys were groundbreaking for bands like us to keep playing later on." And never even thought of it that way. John shares a story about some guy that he met that was in prison. John met him after that, and the guy told John that the one thing that kept him motivated to get out of prison and turn his life around was the lyrics to Book and Its Cover.
Yeah.
And when you start thinking about those kind of things, you start thinking, wow, maybe we did do something. Maybe we mattered to some people, it's crazy, and you add up all these things and you're getting a proclamation from your hometown, and it mattered to some people, I guess. And so, proud of the work, like I said, I think what made it work is just, we were just friends, just trying to have fun with each other.
Yeah. It came from a sincere place.
Yeah, it really did. Tony and I, like, we still talk about things. Like I mentioned, Tony's songwriting is just so meaningful. He didn't want to just make stupid lyrics that just kind of went with music. I mean, all of his lyrics had always meant something. He always wanted to tell a story. I remember when we started Mother of Dissension, and we would talk about how many times we should play a verse, I would always tell Tony, well, how many verses does it take for you to tell the story? Because if it's like
at least eight.
Yeah, yeah. If it's going to take you 3 or 4 verses to tell that story, then that's how many times we're going to play it. Because I knew he was just such a great storyteller in his lyrics.
From the beginning. What about Kicked Off the Bus? Did you get down with the Bleed record? The Kicked Off the Bus, we don't care. You were never gonna be the one to take us anywhere. So good.
Yeah.
His voice is perfect on it.
Yeah, definitely. So he just, he performs, he writes, and he sings with such passion that, I've always just enjoyed playing in a band with him. So.
Yeah. Well, you guys are all awesome to a man, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I gotta get Jimmy on here. He's gonna.
Yeah.
I'm gonna interview him on the 20th of September, and
nice.
then I got to do a short one with Chuck, and then I think we got it. Maybe I'll get on Lipkey one day.
Yeah.
and Nashaya. Where are you at? Where are you at, Nashaya?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, you've done Joe Rivas, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
So
we're gonna do Forest on the 21st.
Very good. Yeah, no, good memories. Good, definitely good memories. So thank you, Zach. I appreciate.
No, you've done a great job, Carl.
So, all right. Well, thank you. And I'm going to get caught up on all your podcasts, so I could now get caught up in what was going on with the Nardcore scene in the years that I was gone.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna work on one that we're gonna do that's Nardcore from '87 to '92, which are kind of like the rougher years, right? So Joe Rivas has curated a list of dudes to interview, and I think that'll be a really good one. So look for that, and I'm going to hold you to getting Doug Moody for me, Carl. Okay, I got to work on that. I got to work on getting you. I guess if someone wants to send me $100 per copy, I'll do bootleg. Releases of all this unreleased Ill Repute stuff. I'll just, I'm gonna put that out for the band. I'm gonna, I could always have that over their head because I know I have it, and I want them to know that I have that too. That's right. If anyone ever asks them who is the best drummer, they better say Carl, or that shit's coming out. All righty. All right, Carl. Thanks so much. All right, Zach. All right. Bye-bye. Talk to you soon. Okay, bye.